let's roll on into week 16 and talk about the final thing that we haven't talked about yet. And that's basically personalizing Compass per user. Okay, so some of this stuff I'm going to show you, it doesn't affect all your users across the board for every dealer. It's only the user, just that user that can go in here. It's called their personal settings. So first of all, what I want to do is I want to share my screen. Let's jump into Compass. We're all used to doing this by now, right? So we've got Compass. Now, over on the left-hand side is the administration link under the menu. We have gone to this link I don't know how many times. We've gone to it from Message Center with Beth when she covered Message Center. We went over admin dealer functions in the first 4 tabs with me. We talked about My Profile, where you can go in and change your email address or your password or change your security questions. But we haven't talked a whole lot about default settings. This very final tab down here on the end. And so that's what we're going to discuss today and this week. So I'm an admin dealer, so I have 2 buttons on my default settings. I have personal settings and I have administration group settings. Okay. If you're not an admin dealer, if you're set to just a dealer level, then you're only going to see the 1 button for personal settings. And this is where you can go to update what you see and how you see it. Columns, you can hide those if you don't need to see those. And you can just do a lot of stuff with the layout. So the very first one that we'll talk about is the general settings. So we click the drop-down arrow and we look at here. The very first one is application theme. So what's application theme mean? Well, it's basically the layout of the page throughout Compass. Okay, by default, it's set to default. Funny, huh? We kind of did it that way. So what's default mean? Well, default is a little bit larger font. There's more space between the lines. It's a little bit easier to read on the eyes, but it takes up more real estate on the page. So if you've got your setting at default, you're more apt to have to use your scroll bar to go up and down and left and right and that type of thing. So what's it look like? Well, let's go back to accounts real quick and we'll just take a look. And when I go to the accounts page, even here, you'll see the font's a little bigger. You'll see the space between the lines are a little bit more. I've only got 20 accounts that I can see right here, but I have to scroll down to get to the bottom of those 20. So you can see that going there, the C-Watch Alarm Co. at the very bottom. I had to scroll quite a bit to get down to that. So it's the same way if I choose an account, I can look at this account, and even on like the location activity, you'll see where it's larger font. So it's, again, easier on your eyes, but it's spaced out a lot more, and I'm having to scroll a lot more. So if I've got a scroll button or a wheel on my mouse like I do here, it's not as big a deal, but otherwise I have to live over here on the right-hand side with my scroll bar, as you can see. Okay, so that's the default setting. And again, it's easier on the eyes because it is larger font and it is wider spaced. But if you're the type of person like I am that doesn't like to scroll a lot and live my life in the scroll bars, then you can change your default setting to where it's compact. Okay, so we'll go back to personal settings. We're going to click the general again. And under the drop-down right here, we're going to select Compact. Okay, I'll hit Save My Changes. You'll see it was a success. I'm good. I don't even have to log out for this. Okay, it's automatically going to take effect. So now if I go back to my Accounts page, let's look at the difference on what we see here. Bam. So now you see all 20 accounts for my recently accessed right there on my screen. Scroll bar is gone. I don't need to scroll for anything on here. So you'll see it's a little bit smaller font. We got rid of all that extra space, but it just looks a little easier and saves time scrolling. Same thing if I go to my locations that I was just at, the Hertz Donut and Coffee Shop, look at the location activity. Now you can see the font's a little bit smaller. We got the spaces all out of there, and you got a lot more information on that page. Okay? So totally up to you. It depends on what your eyes are used to, really, right? Again, I already wear glasses, so my eyes aren't getting much worse. So I'm okay with the smaller print. I'm okay without that space in there. I can kind of see that. And you'll see how we kind of bold every other line to make it easier to read. So again, your choice, but you've got that application thing where you can do the compact or the default. That's where you'll change that. The next one down on general is global search. So the global search is the field that's right up here. It's always on the top of your page, no matter what page you're on in Compass, you always have the global search. This also applies if you're on the mobile. Okay, so if you're on a mobile version of Compass, it's the global search at the top of there as well. you can determine what you want the global search to default to. And again, this is user-based. So if you're the type of person that you always search for an account by the CS number, then you can have your global search set to CS number. But if you don't ever know the CS numbers, the account numbers at CMS, but you always know your customer's name, you can change this to name. So change to name, and then this will default up here to always be name. You can always change it later on if you want to when you do one search at a time, but you'll change the default setting to be name. Okay, so you've got different things that you can all do, and you can set your default setting to any of these items down here. Maybe you're a phone person, and so you do a lot of your searches by phone number. You can select that. You've also got the option right up here at the top, which we added not too long ago, all items. So this all items is nice because it searches everything, okay? So you type in something, and it's going to basically search your database for whatever you typed. So it's nice to find those hidden accounts or hidden contacts, but I will forewarn you, if you are a dealer that's got a few accounts online with us, that's going to slow down your search. Okay, so if it's got to go, because it's going to go through every page and every one of your accounts to look for what you've typed in here. So I like to not use this as my default setting. I like to use it as a backup. So if I'm searching for an account by CS number or by name and I can't find it, then I'll go ahead and select all items, type in what I want to look for, and let it search for that. I think that works a whole lot better. The people that did request this, that was one thing they came back to us about was, it slows down the search quite a bit. Well, yeah, because it's looking for a lot of information or looking at a lot of information for a little bit of stuff. So there's your all items. Now, when you type something here in the global search and it finds more than one item, you can now determine what columns you see for the accounts that it found. Okay, so right now I've got it set to only show the account number, the location name, and the address for whatever accounts it finds. Okay, but you can change this. If you want more information, if you want the city, the state, and the phone number to display in your search results, then you can do that. Click the drop arrow, select which ones you want, make sure they're highlighted. You'll see them up here, and then you'll hit Save Changes. So all this does, just to kind of give you an idea, let's look for an account that starts with Van. We all know these exist, right? Because we know I've been doing demos for a while. So it found two. So you'll see my setting right now is CS number, location, name, and address. So if I wanted more information on there, if I wanted the city, state, zip, and the phone to always show up, then I would use my global or my personal settings right here and change that. I can change it once at a time when it pops up here like I just did, but if I always want these results, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select these and hit Save All My Changes. Okay, so that's your global search results columns that's going to be showing. Now, the next line that we're going to show under General, I don't think hardly anybody knows this exists. We just put it in production, I believe, in June or possibly May, but we gave users the ability to change what their home page was. So whatever page pops up when you log into Compass, you can now determine that by selecting your home page. If you haven't done anything, it defaults like mine does right now to the accounts recently accessed, but you can click this drop down and you can see all the different choices that you can choose from for your home page. So like if you're the service manager who's constantly going to my dashboard to check the service requests, let's make that your home page, right? So now I can make that my home page, and as soon as I log in, that's the tab that pops up for me. It's not the accounts page anymore. It's going to be the service request tab, and I can go ahead and look at that and decide what I need to do. Okay, so that's your home page. And you can see here you've got a bunch of different, every dashboard page essentially can be a home page. Even the newsroom, and I would tell you that probably Jennifer Marshall, if she's on here right now, she would tell you that the newsroom homepage should probably be your homepage for good because of so much good information on that page. But again, you can select whatever you want to be your homepage right here from these selections. So that's your general. Now, I would always caution, anytime you make changes, like I've made changes now, you always want to make sure you click the blue Save All Changes button. If you try to go away from this page, you'll get the warning that says, hey, you haven't saved changes yet. Do you want to save them before you go away from it? So just always make sure you click the Save All Changes and you'll be good to go. Now, the next tab, this is a pretty big tab. There's a lot of selections here. and I'll try not to take up too much time going through this, but this is my dashboard. Okay, so you're going to see a bunch of different settings that you can go in and personalize on here. The very first one is time filters, and you're going to see the time filter pretty much for all the tabs on here, and this will determine, you can set this to be what you want your default time frame to be on the account statistics. So for the adds and cancels, what do you want it to be? Previous month? Do you want it to be previous day or current year? You can set that default here. That way you don't have to change it all the time, every time you go to the account statistics on my dashboard. Okay, and you're going to see the time filters on, like I said, several of the different tabs. I'll scroll down. You'll see them on repeat activity. You're going to see it on fire activity, alarms and dispatches. All these have time filters on them, and you can set those time filters by default to what you want to see and what works best for you. Okay? So anytime you see the time filter, that's those tabs. If you're a fire guy, for example, fire guys typically will have their fire activity set to 3 days because they're looking for those timer tests that have missed 3 days in a row. That tells them there's something wrong with that. So again, you can change that to whatever the drop downs are. That saves you time when you're actually on the tabs. Now, directly below that, you're going to see a couple maps, right? So account statistics map, that's the adds and cancels page. Do you want to see the map? Do you want to hide the map? You can select right here. If the map doesn't mean anything to you and it just takes a few seconds longer to load and you don't want that few seconds longer, then you can go ahead and select it to be hidden and you don't need it. Same thing with the alarms and dispatches. You can show or hide the map by default. Now, I've got some people, like I've got some national dealers that have accounts nationwide. They want to see their account statistics, their cancels and their ads. They want to see the map because it's kind of nice seeing that visually when it's across the country. But if you're a dealer that, you've got an account in a small regional area, let's say just central Indiana or central Florida only, then maybe the map doesn't mean that much to you because you're always having to blow it up anyway to try to find that stuff. Again, not a big deal. You can hide it and then it's just going to speed up the loading process of that page a little bit if it's slow for you. Now, all of these next items are going to be the different tabs, and they're all like the columns on each one of the tabs. And you have the ability to hide the columns that don't mean anything to you. Like, for example, I've got account statistics activated and account statistics canceled. Well, right now, I've got all the columns. This guarantees that I'm probably going to have to scroll left and right, even though I've got the compact setting on. That's a lot of columns. I'm probably going to have to scroll back and forth. But if I'm looking at this, I don't use custom value 1 or custom value 2 for anything. I use custom value 1, so I do want that on there. So I can go ahead and click the X and get rid of these 2 columns. They're gone. And if I have access to only one dealer number, I'm just my dealer number only, I don't really need to see the service company number, right? Because it's going to be my service company number. So I can hide that if I want to. And all this is doing is just kind of cleaning up that page for you and hopefully eliminating the need to scroll left and right to get all of your information there. And again, it's default settings. I'll keep saying default settings over and over again. You can always change these, one-offs while you're on the page itself. You can click the 6-die domino and go ahead and say, right now I want to see everything. And you can go ahead and click everything. When you come back to that page, it's going to revert back to the default settings. Okay, and if you want to see all your selections, you just click these arrows. And now I've got all my arrows. The ones that are in white are the ones that I have hidden. Okay, same thing with my missed or my canceled. I can look at these. Right now, I'll select active date. I want my active date on here and my cancellation date. That way I can see, how long of a lifespan my account had, and I can start looking at that a little bit better. So account statistics canceled, actually the active date is a fairly new column that we've added to this page. So just in case you didn't miss that. We've also got repeat activity missed timers, repeat activity, wrong number on subscribers, and troubles on zones. I can decide what columns I want to see, what columns I don't want to see on here. Okay, and I've got repeat troubles on zones. Now I've got my more time filters on here. So my repeat activity is 7 days. My fire activity is 3 days. Okay, and I can change these to whatever the drop downs are. So that's what that's going to display for me on there. Now my fire activity, I've got my columns here. I've got my alarm dispatches. I'm scrolling on down. You're kind of getting the gist of this. If it's a tab, then I can hide and display columns for me. And then I've also got the time filters that I can do. You'll see my time filter for service request is 30 days. I'm a really small dealer. If I did 24 hours or 3 days, this would be blank for me all the time. If I'm doing a demo, I want to be able to show you some information. So I've got my time filter set to 30 days. Most of you guys that are active dealers aren't going to want to have it set to 30 days because you're going to want to be able to get to those service requests a little bit quicker than I do as a demo dealer. So we'll scroll on down here towards the bottom, and then we're going to get into, well, let me talk a little bit about the service request for Show SRS. So if you're a message center dealer, Beth talked about this a couple weeks ago. If you're a message center dealer, you have the option to hide anytime one of our monitoring reps logs SRS. So it's a show or hide, up to you. And that's going to display on the service request tab in my dashboard. Now, why would you want to hide it? Well, if you're a service or a message center dealer, what will typically happen is your customer may call into the monitoring center and they may request service. And the first thing our monitoring rep is going to do is log SRS, which is the event ID for sub request service. Then they're going to see that you're a message center dealer. So they will transfer you over to a message center rep. And then that message center rep will talk to your customer and they're going to log the immediate service for Berg or whatever it might be, what the customer's calling for. So what's going to happen is a lot of times you're going to get duplications of a service request. Okay, so if you're a message center dealer and you don't want that duplication, you don't want to see the SRS that was logged by the monitoring rep plus the service request that was logged by the message center rep, then you can hide the SRS, and then you're not going to see what the rep or the monitoring reps log. Okay, and again, this is default setting, so you can change it when you're on the page and just kind of double check. But a lot of our message center dealers will select to hide that SRS because it's just a duplication event. So that's what that SRS is. If you're not a message center dealer, I highly, 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 highly suggest, in fact, I tell you flat out, don't do this. Don't hide it. You want the SRS because if you're not a message center dealer, this is the only way you're going to see your SRS events. There's no message center event being logged. Okay, so that's your service request show SRS. SRS, again, is that event that is logged by a monitoring rep for sub request service. Okay, so we'll scroll on down a little bit more. We got alarm details. We got device sunset. These are all tabs that we talked about on the dashboard, right? And you can update all of these and hide the columns. Now, let's get down here to the heads up widget. It's been 15 weeks since we talked about the heads up widget, heads up page and the widgets that are on that page. And I want to remind everyone from this one right here, I can hide those widgets. Okay, so right now there's 8 widgets on the heads up display tab. But if I'm a dealer that doesn't do supervised open and closed accounts, so I don't do any supervised open and closed accounts, they're all log only, we send them a report or they get a text message, whatever, I can actually hide those widgets by clicking on the X and getting rid of those. Now I've only got the 6 widgets on my page, and it's a little bit easier for me to read, okay? Or if I'm a service manager and some of this stuff doesn't matter to me, I don't care about the dispatches, I don't care about the important activities, I can hide all these. And now, again, those widgets are just a little bit easier to read. That page is simpler to my eyes. And we will continue to add more widgets, so it'll always be good to go back here to this page and hide the widgets that you don't need, okay? Now, below that, again, this is all heads-up display right down here. This is all different time filters that you can select for all those different widgets. Now, the first 3 had to do with the timer test widget. Okay, so the timer test widget shows you your daily and your weekly and your monthly accounts that have missed timer tests. And the time in here will show you, this tells me if it's a daily timer test and it's missed 3 days in a row, it's going to show up on my widget. Okay, if it's a weekly timer test and it's missed 14 days in a row, it's going to show up. So in theory, it should have sent 2 timer tests in those 14 days. It hasn't sent any in 14 consecutive days, so it's going to show up on my widget. That, again, is an alert for me as a dealer that I need to get to that account and get it fixed and find out what's going on. Monthly, we've got it set to 60 right now. Okay, so it's 60 consecutive days it has not sent a timer test. Again, in theory, it should have sent 2 because of the monthly timer test. Now, you can change these to whatever you want. You can change this to 1 even for your daily timer test. You can change them all to 1 if you wanted to. That's just going to make that widget that much bigger. So that's what you're looking at when you're looking at that timer test widget. It's whatever day this is, what you've got selected in your default settings. And I will tell you, by default, if you all open up your default settings right now, I believe it's 3 on my timer test. I believe it's 14 on my weekly, and I believe it's 90 on the monthly. So it's 3 missed timer tests for either monthly, weekly, or dailies. Okay, and that's what's going to display on that widget. So, but that's our default setting. That's like our standard operating whatever. You can change that to whatever you want, whatever works best for you. The rest of them are all, service requests like that, like my regular service request tab. I've got it set to 30 days. Heads up dispatches is 7 days. Important activities is 7 days. Again, I'm a small dealer, so I like to see by 7 days. If you're a larger dealer, you might change that and drop that down. Or I'm sorry, if you're a smaller dealer like me, you could go 30 or 60 or 90 days if you wanted to, but by 7 days is by default, and that shows up on all those widgets. Okay, so a lot of information on the My dashboard that you can customize for you. And again, it's really set up to make it easier for you to read and get rid of those scroll bars that so many people hate. Now, the next one we're going to look at is accounts. This is pretty simple to look at, right? We click on the drop-down arrow, and there's only one selection there. I can talk about this one in a few seconds. Show canceled account. Do you want to see the canceled accounts when you go to the accounts page? Yes or no? I'm the type of person as a dealer, I want them hidden by default. There is a checkbox on the accounts page that I can select to do it. But as a demo dealer, if I cancel an account, I don't need it showing up on my accounts page anymore, so I can have it hidden. If you're the type of person that you maybe start out with accounts out of service when they're a shell account, or maybe you place them out of service because people don't pay, then they pay, and you want to activate them a lot, that happens a lot for you, then you might want to go ahead and have the show. And so you can set that up that way. So show canceled accounts, this just overrides, sets the default for the accounts page of whether it's going to show your canceled accounts or not canceled accounts. And again, you can override this, just like you can with a lot of the other pages. You can override it that one time on that page. Okay, now the locations settings. So talk a little bit about this, because we've got some pretty nice customizations on this one that you can do. The very first one you're going to see is location activity items per page. So you can select how many lines of information you see on the location activity tab. That's the very first tab. When you pull up an account, location activity is basically the event history, and you can decide how many line items you want to see. So you can go 10, 20, all the way up to 150, 160. I will forewarn anyone that's doing this, if you select 60 or 100 or 150, you're probably going to have a couple issues. One, the page is going to load a little bit slower because it's loading a lot of information. Two, you're going to get frustrated a little bit because you're going to be scrolling up and down a lot. And if you have to go left and right, the scroll bar for left and right is only at the bottom. So if I'm at the top of my page, for example, let's just go to, we'll cancel there. Let's go to locations. So when we're looking at this page right here for Hertz Donut, now if I had 150, now you'll see I've got mine minimized, right? So I can get everything without having to scroll left and right. So I'm not in too bad a shape. But if I had to scroll left and right, I would have to scroll all the way down to the bottom of my page, get to the scroll bar, scroll to the right, and then scroll back up to see what I was trying to find. Oh, yeah, it was operator DJVM. Okay, so that can get frustrating, obviously. So that's, when you think about 150 lines, a lot of people go, well, if I have 150 lines per page, then I don't have as many pages and it doesn't take as long to click through. But it can be a little more frustrating because you're having to scroll up and down to do left and right. So what's the fix for that possibly? Well, let's go down to that next line. So let's go to default settings. So just FYI, I think 20, 30, 40, that's kind of the sweet spot for the number of lines. Okay, again, people can do whatever they want, whatever is comfortable for you, but I like having that 20, 30 range. I can scroll down and scroll back up pretty easily on that. But if you don't like to have to do left or right, you've got location activity columns that you can now hide. Okay, so right now it's defaulted to show you everything. So all of it is there. Right off the bat, I can tell you every one of you can go in here and you can get rid of raw signal because that's for future usage. Nothing is under raw signal right now. It's a blank column just taking up space. So you can wipe that one out right now. It's going to be populated eventually when we get that updated, but it's not there yet. It's for future use only. So we wipe that out, right? And maybe I'm a dealer that doesn't care too much about incident numbers. I don't do any event history reports off my incident number. I don't call back into the monitoring station and give them incident numbers. I don't do searches like that. I can wipe that out as well. So I clean this up. That's going to probably, and if I'm in the compact setting, that's probably going to make sure that I don't have to scroll left and right. Going to make it a little bit more compact and easier to read, and now I can just scroll up and down to see my information. Now, the other thing you can do with several of the location tabs, including the location activity, is now you can customize where the columns are, right? So let's say that we saw earlier operator DJVM was all the way to the right. So the operator column shows all the way to the right. Well, if I want to change that, I can now click and drag, and I can put that right after the CS number, and I can drop it right there. So now my column is going to show date and time, CS number, there's the operator, there's my zone, event, zone description, comment, user number, username, area, and match, right? Now I can move any of these around that I want to. If I'm not a big fan on match, I can also get rid of that too. If I want the username first, and then the user number, I can go ahead and do that as well. So I can move these columns around. That's something that we've been able to do at CMS for a long time in Mastermind, is we're able to move columns around in our event history to exactly what we need to do. The tech support guys in dealer support, they've got theirs set up completely different than the way I have mine set up. The nice thing about Compass is we can't hide columns. So we've got all the columns that are available, whether we use them or not, whether there's any information there or not, they're there taking up real estate. That's the cool thing about Compass is if you're not using that column, you can now hide it and make it easier to read for you. Okay, so that's your location activity. Your zones is the same way. So I can go in here and I can select which zones I see. And I've got zone ID, zone description, service type, state, restore required, zones to restore. If I'm not a fire guy, if I'm not doing any kind of NFPA fire, commercial fire, any of that stuff that requires zones to restore or any of that information, I can simply go in here and I can get rid of those. And let's say that I'm the type of person that, I don't want to have to scroll to the right. I want my actions, the edit or the delete, I want those actions to be on the left-hand side of the screen instead of the right. I can do that. I can drag that up here, and now my actions will be on the left-hand side. So if I do have so much information and I have to scroll to the right, I don't have to scroll to the right to get to the actions anymore. I can go ahead and edit it from the left-hand side. Okay, so that's your zones. So you can change these columns around again, and it's really beneficial, especially for the zones and the contacts. The contacts, you can do the exact same thing. So we scroll down here to the contacts, and it shows by default. Do you want to see the phone numbers for the contacts and just click on the drop-down arrow to show the phones per contact, or do you want the phones to automatically appear? And it just, all that does is it drags it down a little bit more so that the page is a little bit longer, but then you see all the phone information for your contacts automatically without having to click those. That's what the show phones is. Now for my list, for my contact list and my other contacts, I can do the exact same thing I did with my zones. So again, if I want my actions to be on my left-hand side, I'll drag that up here and drop it. And I'll do the same thing for my other contacts. Now we all know from previous weeks, right, that, other contacts and contact lists. The contacts tab shows two different tabs or two different sets of information. One is the contact list, anyone that's being called in case of an emergency, and then your other contacts are anybody that is on the contact list but not on the call list. So these are people that have passcodes on the account, but they're not being called. It's your SMS or your email auto notification contacts. It's your verbal duress, if any of your customers have verbal duress. Those are all under the other contacts. So you want to update both of those if you're going to update one of them, okay? Now, you also have the selection here. Not a lot of people know about this either. Delete contacts with the same phone numbers. So what this is show or hide. So if I go in and I delete a contact from an account, and it says, oh, this account, this contact also exists with this phone number. Do you want to delete it as well? If I want that to pop up, then I can click show. If I don't want it to pop up, then I can do hide. If I want to delete every contact individually that way, then I can do hide. But if I want to go ahead and wipe out any of that with the exact same phone number, I can go ahead and do that. And then below that is going to be location address. Okay, and that's just the box up there on the top right-hand side. Do you want to show all the information on that, or do you want to minimize it so it only shows like the name and address? Doesn't show the dealer number, doesn't show the location value fields and the custom value fields, all that information. So that's just show or hide. And basically, just to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like, let's jump right back over to the location page on the Hertz Donut. You'll see I've got it set to show. So this little drop-down arrow will always be dropped down. It shows any information that's in this little section right here. If you said hide, which a lot of people by default, they have it set to hide, it'll be like that, where it's only showing the name, address, and the phone number. Okay, but if you're a company that likes to use the custom value fields or corporate account numbers or any of that stuff, or you have multiple dealer numbers, it's nice to have that opened automatically. That way you don't have to toggle it each time to see that information. Okay, so that's what that location information is for that section. So what we're going to do here is click back over to administration. So that's the last part on the location information. So that's all the tabs that you'll see on the selections you have right now there. Now, if you don't have billing and payments over here on the left-hand side with your login, you're not going to see personal settings for billing and payments. Okay, but I, as a dealer, I'm the owner of the company, so I do have billing and payments over here, so I can select this. And all this does is, if you have access to the pre-mover list, I can show all history. So it's, again, it's just another time filter. Do I want everything, last 30 days, last 90 days? And this is the pre-mover list that we talked about several weeks ago when we talked about the billing and payments tab. And again, here's the pre-mover list and what columns I want to be able to see. Again, I can hide all those or hide the ones I don't need to see. So that's all you can really get from the billing and payments tab as far as your default settings. And then last but not least is your administration. So if you're an admin dealer, this allows you to personalize the Manage Users tab. And again, you can select which columns you want to see. And as far as company contacts, if you want to show or hide inactive contacts, we typically don't make contacts inactive. We delete contacts. But there are some dealers out there that do make them inactive. They don't want to delete them because they want that record for all time. So if you're the type of dealer that doesn't want to delete your company contacts, you only want to make them inactive, you simply make them inactive by giving them an end date. That makes them inactive, and then you have the option here to either show or hide your inactive company contacts. Maybe you make them inactive because they come back a lot. Who knows? Maybe, or they're going on vacation. You make them inactive while they're on vacation, and then you reactivate them. So if that's the case, you might want to show your inactive contacts. Okay, so that's totally up to you. Again, if you're an admin dealer, you'll have this area. If you have billing and payments, you'll have this area. Otherwise, you'll just see just these 3 or 4 personal settings that you can go in and adjust. Okay, so that is basically wrapping up the default settings and how you can go ahead and customize Compass by user. And again, it's by user. So everyone that has a login has that personal settings tab, and they can go in there and they can adjust it however they want. Doesn't affect any other users for that dealer. Okay, so that's going to wrap us up for today.